We are live. Good to see you today, my EOS friends. Welcome to the EOS Podcast. Today we have Abhinav from Murmur, the Twitter possibly of EOS, a microblogging platform that is really cool. I've been digging into it, and this is a fun one. So like usual, we'll get into EOS and then Murmur. And so Abhinav, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Abhinav. Currently I run Chainflux and Wondex. So Wondex is built on the Ethereum and Neo blockchains. It is a decentralized exchange built on those two platforms. Chainflux is basically a development house which has 20 coders, mainly focused on blockchain platforms such as Ethereum, Neo, and EOS. One of the in-house projects that we were building was Murmur, which we started about 3 months ago. We started out as an in-house project, but then kind of developed quite fast because we started looking into EOS by itself as a platform and the different applications that could be built on EOS. We initially looked into EOS to kind of develop a decentralized exchange on EOS, but then we saw that EOS is so much more powerful and you can build kind of non-financial applications is what I think it was kind of set for. And that's how the kind of idea of Murmur came about.
Cool. Well, nice to meet you. And with EOS, I'm curious, since you've done a lot of development, it sounds, with ETH and Neo and EOS, and you say that EOS is more of possibly a development platform as opposed to a currency. What are kind of the striking differences there that you see?
So I'd say the most striking difference would be, in very fast transaction confirmations, free transactions, and the kind of concept of EOS accounts that you've got, where it makes it easier for a person who's not familiar with blockchain to move into a blockchain-based app without actually knowing that, yes, I am using a blockchain app. That I think is key for kind of mass adoption of blockchain, along with the easy user experience, which I think is what apps built on EOS can offer users relatively more than the other blockchains.
Yeah, that usability is a big key, it seems like, for sure. Do you see, what's your take on there's a lot of worry about the decentralization or centralization aspect of EOS compared to something like ETH. What do you think there? How's that play out from a developer standpoint?
Actually, to be honest, we are not too worried about that because there is kind of DPoS that it's what it's based on. You've got 15 out of the 21 block producers who need to kind of confirm. We are not too worried about the relative centralization of that, because that's what makes it makes it relatively faster and makes it relatively easier for developers and for people to develop on, and potentially easier for people to adopt EOS based applications. So we are not too worried about the kind of relative centralization of that.
Yeah, that's kind of the trade-off that seems to be worth it at this point. Especially, DPoS does seem like it's more resilient than it gets credit for at this point. I've watched the development of Steemit and BitShares and now EOS, and it's everything's got its drawbacks, but so far it's working as it's supposed to work, which is cool. Well, let's get into Murmur a little bit. That's the Dapp that you came up with. You guys are in an alpha version now, is that right?
Yeah. So alpha version releases in about 12 hours.
Oh, perfect timing. Perfect timing. Same time this video, this video released just after the alpha version. So Murmur is a microblogging site. It looks like the interface looks similar to Twitter. It's not, it's not the same as Twitter, but it's the microblogging. And what are the main things there? I know that you guys are trying to protect the user data. What other main things are you doing that's different from something like Twitter?
Yeah, so the kind of main advantage also for users would be, one is we've got a token model that rewards users for providing good content. That kind of the exact specifics of that also should come out in a couple of days. The other thing is that for advertisers who want to advertise to users directly, they can clearly see which user has how many followers or has how many likes to all of his posts. And they can directly kind of target users based on what data they see that is available on the blockchain itself. So hence it makes it easier for advertisers to have a targeted audience towards which they target, and they can reward those audiences directly.
Okay. And then and you said, could you tell about the reward for the audiences directly? Because that, how's that fit in?
So basically advertisers can kind of contact us saying, we want to throw ads to these users. We show them saying, okay, this data is already available on the blockchain. We have, for example, suppose we will have say 5,000 or 10,000 users, and advertiser wants to throw ads to a certain demographic of that user. Now on the app, people can fill in their details such as, their name or their date of birth, etc. Then advertisers can see, okay, these are the kinds of users who are, this particular demographic is the kind of users who I want to throw an ad to. And basically within the app itself, we compute saying, okay, ads are thrown to all users. And then within the app, we compute which users are eligible to watch which kind of ads. And based on that, users can get rewarded for watching those ads, where the advertisers put in a certain budget, and based on the number of people who watch that ad, they get rewarded for that particular ad.
Okay. So it is basically opt-in on the user side. If I didn't want to put my information out to any advertisers, I wouldn't have to provide that. And it wouldn't be scraped anywhere along the way. But if I did want to, and I felt comfortable doing that, then I would get paid in Murmur tokens as far as for watching the ads or for just giving my information over to the advertisers.
Yeah.
Okay. And does that information go kind of in an individual level where they can see information directly about you, or is it kind of packaged in as metadata?
You can kind of see individual information, but this is only if you actually want to view ads. If you say, I just want to interact with the platform, you can just post murmurs. You can, interact with other people's murmurs such as Snoop, or you can share their particular murmurs, and you get rewarded for that based on our particular token model that we have created, which also should kind of come out in a couple of days. So
yeah, and I mention this a lot because people automatically get very scared when they see that, like, oh, I'm giving my information away. But to people listening, you probably heard me say it before. Everyone already has all your information individually. Anything about you is completely out there and transparent. So the thought of within the blockchain in the controlled way, putting your information out there it is not as scary as it's made out to be sometimes, or that gut reaction that we have. And especially I like the idea of being able to keep it private if we want to. And you were saying that we have these different ways that you can interact. So you can murmur, which is basically like putting out a short message. Then you can shout, and then you can snoop. What's the difference between a murmur and a shout?
So a murmur, and it's called a yell. A yell is basically sharing someone else's murmur. Murmur is basically a 256 character message, analogous to a tweet. A share is analogous to a yell. A snoop is analogous to a like. And you've got comment, which is the same thing. You've got whisper, which is a private message, which again is encrypted with the other user's public key, and hence it is encrypted and also goes through the blockchain, and hence it's kind of peer-to-peer encrypted messaging, which is the whisper feature that we have got on the app.
Cool. And there's another interesting feature with the getting back to the kind of the advertising part, where it is transparent kind of who it is and where the message is coming from. That's also one of the features you guys mentioned, is this idea that there's traceability of information online to weed out news and the quality of news possibly. Can you talk about how that works and what that looks like?
Yeah, so that I think we are going to probably look into having a very robust system for that, say in the next 2 to 3 months. But right now what we have is that basically when somebody puts out a certain murmur, wherever that murmur is shared or whoever comments on that entire thread is visible on the blockchain itself. We're introducing a feature that basically allows you to report on certain posts. And if a lot of your posts are being reported on, then we would kind of block that particular account, because there are users themselves who are reporting on this particular post, which is either malicious content or content not good for the community. So that would kind of weed out not only the fake news, but also kind of malicious news. And ultimately, we'd like to introduce a kind of token reward system that rewards people for actively reporting on news that has been deemed malicious. So on that front, we're working on a staking model for our token itself, where you stake some of our token in order to even create a murmur, in order to snoop, or in order to comment, or in order to yell. And the more people who like or interact with your particular murmur, the more tokens you earn for that, because given the number of people who like or snoop or yell your particular murmur. So kind of that builds into the token model itself. So that is the goal.
Okay. And what would be the difference between something that maybe is just maybe something that's malicious, or the difference between something that's just unpopular? Let's say there's an unpopular opinion and a lot of people don't like it. How's that weighted in?
So unpopular opinion, how we look at it is that, if you look at an unpopular opinion, you're just not going to snoop on it, or you're not going to follow it, and you're not going to comment on it, or you're going to comment on it and say, hey, I don't think you're right. But we're saving a report for something that is truly malicious. So ultimately, it's going to be kind of the users would decide themselves. You would ultimately have to stake some tokens in order to determine if something is malicious or not. So hence, you're not going to go out there and kind of spam the network by just reporting every post, because you're not going to have enough tokens to stake. And if you do not, if you stake those tokens, you cannot perform other actions such as murmur or comment or like someone else's post. And through those other actions, you can actually earn some tokens. Okay. So hence, kind of that builds into the system to avoid the spam and to only report something that actually ends up being malicious.
So there's a cost to reporting something malicious. That makes sense. And it sounds like a little bit like it would be not the same, but in Steemit, in the Steemit model, there's a cost to downvoting someone and giving their post less visibility. It costs you some of your voting power. So you can kind of see how those incentives play out a little bit on Steem and self-regulate to some extent. Okay, that's cool. So what's I know that you guys got an airdrop coming up as well. Is that on the board still, or how far in the future is that?
Well, airdrop is basically we are releasing our alpha tomorrow. So kind of our goal is to not treat it as a crypto kind of airdrop, but more as a user kind of airdrop. Just have people, those who install the app, those who create 2 murmurs, and those who refer 2 friends are eligible for 100 of our Mur tokens. So that's how the airdrop is structured. Those who install the alpha will be available on Google Play. The iPhone the iOS release, as well as the release for web, we are targeting in 3 weeks, both of them together. So hence, those who install that as well will be eligible for 100 more tokens. This should go on for 6 weeks, the airdrop, and basically incentivizes people to come and interact with the platform. And initially it would be just importing your EOS account. Later we would start looking at saying, can we enable people to create EOS accounts as well if the prices for creating user accounts drops.
And is it going to be like a DPoS system as well, or how's the interaction of the actual blockchain going to work for Murmur? Are you going to have, who's going to be validating the blocks as they come through?
Oh, it's not a separate blockchain. Everything goes through EOS. It's a Dapp built on EOS.
Okay. So, And you guys are going to be also, I guess this works because you guys are also going to be, I saw on the roadmap, be launching this on Neo as well.
So that's not yet fully certain. I mean, we are exploring also the EOS. The Neo launch certainly isn't. It's quite a bit down the road and it's not yet certain. We might modify that depending on how the platform builds on EOS itself. If we get 20,000, 50,000 users, then there's no need to go and build on another blockchain. So hence, we might not even go that direction. That entirely depends on how the next 3 months pans out.
And are you guys considering integration of some sort of identity system, or is it going to be an anonymous? You know how Twitter, there's a lot of anonymous accounts. Are you going to try to enforce some sort of one person, one account on Murmur, or is that not a concern?
So the only thing we are looking into that is to kind of balance out people who want to give out information or personal information, because right now a single person can get 100 EOS accounts, right? And probably if he really puts in some effort, he can also get in multiple Twitter accounts. So hence trying to kind of balance out between somebody who wants to give away their identity to somebody who wants to always hold their identity to themselves. We are looking at kind of, doing that, incentivizing people to give out a bit of, not give out their identity, but at least, give out certain aspects by rewarding them with our tokens. But there is no way in which we can completely secure that this person's identity is associated with this person's EOS account unless we do an entire KYC and ascertain that this person belongs to this EOS account. Again, that would become centralized. So we are still figuring out how to kind of have that balance. But right now, anybody who has with an EOS account can log into Murmur.
Cool. What do you think? What do you think about Dan's possible identity solution that he's hinted on?
So I'll have to look into that in much more detail. Once probably I look into it in much more detail, I'll be able to give a comprehensive kind of comment on that.
Yeah. I'm always curious about that because he's hinted about this EOS basically verifying people's identity or having some sort of biometric verification, and then I'm always curious as to what dApps are going to do with that, because that opens up a door for applications to maybe go for one user, one account type of thing, which lends a lot of accountability to people and how they act online. It's really easy for someone to have a bunch of sock accounts or a bunch of puppet accounts and go out there and be astroturfing and just messing around because it's not them, or they can throw that account away. So I think that'll be a big shift in social media for sure, as those identity solutions come in.
Exactly.
Like if you're going to do something, then 6 months from now, everyone's going to remember that was you who was acting up. So it gives them more of a. I liked in your guys' mission statement you talked about kind of the history of civilization real briefly, and how we came from tribes and grew into cities and local communities, and then kingdoms, and then governments, and then now we've evolved to this point where it is kind of these almost digital empires, these corporations that have taken control of all of our data. And so that's kind of where you guys are at, is trying to plug the hole in the dam here and control some of our data for us. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest thing would be, not simplest, but something we could consider was, we were considering was, say, fingerprint verification. So you can log in by just like most phones have fingerprint verification nowadays. So you just use your fingerprint and you can kind of log in directly, which then connects directly with your EOS account. Now phones are also coming into facial recognition, which again can be, I think if they open up, say, some simple APIs, that also can be easily connected with the EOS account on Murmur itself. But again, we'll probably explore that in a month or two's time. Right now we are kind of building out the alpha version. We are then working on the iOS and the web version. Then we'll work on our wallet, which is going to be within Murmur, and then integrating third-party apps such as games which is basically gives a browser-like feel on the app itself, but using the wallet that you already have on Murmur to play those games. And then you can share that your results or your what you achieved on the game directly onto the social network itself. So kind of creating an entire ecosystem there.
Yeah, and that's, so that would be analogous to how you see something like Facebook used today, where if I go to, say, like Yelp or some other site, it says you can log in with Facebook, you just click log in with Facebook and it takes care of it for you. So you're aiming to, in the future, do this with Murmur, where you have your Murmur account and you can, through the API, log into other places?
Log in as well as within Murmur itself, it basically opens like a browser where you can play, say, for example, various games, some brilliant games that are built on EOS right now. You can play those games directly by signing whatever transactions are required with the Murmur account itself that you've got, or the account that you've got on Murmur itself. So hence it keeps everything in one ecosystem where you can hold your EOS, hold your tokens, interact with the community, as well as play games.
Okay. Are you going to be, do you see Murmur being used then as possibly a currency rail and things of that in the future?
Yeah. So initially what we are looking at is rewarding or incentivizing people to create Murmurs. Our token economics again will come out in a couple of days, but that is kind of enabling for every kind of user, depending on his number of followers, depending on how many likes or shares his Murmur has got, he will receive certain number of Mur tokens as reward. That incentive kind of reduces with the number of users that come into the system, and then you will have to stake your Mur tokens in order to perform certain actions, such as create a new Murmur, etc. This prevents the relative spamming of the system. So that entire model comes out in a couple of days, which shows how the token can be used, as well as the ad network that I mentioned earlier.
And when is the how far off in development is the tokenomics that you mentioned, and like when do you see them being implemented on the site into the beta version?
Into the beta version in a month's time.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And are you guys looking to onboard users right now? Is it something that or are you kind of holding it static right now and testing?
So it's the alpha version releases on the Play Store itself. We're looking to onboard the initial few users, get a lot of feedback, and then rapidly keep incorporating all the feedback that we get into the beta version that comes subsequently. But initially looking to onboard quite a few alpha users through the airdrop, and hence getting feedback and making the app much, much better through a kind of community-driven effort.
Okay, and so the incentive for people to start using during the alpha version before the kind of tokenomics are there is because that enables you to be part of the airdrop. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I will be downloading the alpha version tomorrow. It's only about 12 hours from now, so that's kind of exciting. That'll be fun. I'm going to do it just on the first day, just because I want to be a first day user. I think that's that's like being part of the Genesis block on EOS or something. That's just nice to be, nice to be a part of history there. So hopefully, cool. So what kind of last kind of few minutes of information do you have here about Murmur? Anything we missed or anything that you'd like to talk about?
So I think we covered probably, I'd say, in the roadmap, how we go about building usually is to kind of get as much feedback as we can from users. Criticism, everything is welcome. And then we kind of move quite fast on fixing whatever kind of issues or adding new features. The immediate roadmap would be to add the wallet, potentially add creating new EOS accounts, entirely depending on the cost for that, adding potential integration of third-party apps into Murmur itself. So that would be, and iOS and web version release. So that would be the kind of roadmap for the next 6 weeks. After that, also would be to engage current users with the token economics. We're going to release that blog post on that in a few days. Engage the users with that particular token economic model, and then grow as fast as we can.
How many developers do you have working on this right now?
So like I said, we have our development partner is Chainflux. We've got 6 developers working on this.
Yeah, that's nice. I think that's an advantage, is that a lot of that you're coming through another team of, that you guys have already built a company together. It sounds like you've got a team of developers who's already working and, in the flow of it. So having them be able to focus on Murmurs that's a good advantage for you guys. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my EOS friends, where is the best place that people can find Murmur, and is your website the best place, Telegram, or where would you like people to be able to find you and download the beta?
Website would be the best place. Being part of the community would be the Telegram. The link is also available on the website. The link to the beta also will be available in about 12 hours on the website. So website, I think, would be the best place for a potential Murmur user to come on to.
Cool. Well, I'll put your website in the show notes, and we have the San Francisco Hackathon coming up, if you're listening to this podcast, in San Francisco. And then the day after, on Monday, after the San Francisco Hackathon, is the Scaling Blockchain Conference, which I'm going to be an MC at. And a lot of the block producers and people that are doing big things from the hackathon are going to be at the Scaling Blockchain Conference on Monday after the hackathon. So I'll put that in the show notes so people can get a little discount and then come hang out at the conference. So that'll be fun. And this today, my friends, is the EOS Podcast. And this was a great talk with Abhinav from Murmur, and the Twitter of EOS Blockchain coming up soon. So it was great having you on, Abhinav. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is.